Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Arctic, the virtual Arctic. It's wonderful to have you all with us. Welcome to AXA Arctic Live. Now, these 2 weeks are all about exploring life and science in the frozen north, and it's great to have you all with us. My name's Jamie from Encounter EDU, and I will be your host for today. And we're looking at Arctic food chains. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the living things in the Arctic and how they are connected through feeding. Now, normally, if we were on Arctic Live itself, we would be up in Ny-Ålesund, and that's on the island of Svalbard. I've got my little globe here. So just here. So if I get my pointy thing, which I somehow become lost, but we're on the island of the Svalbard up here, and that's you can see between the North Pole and the north of Norway. We've got Greenland here, Iceland, the UK, Norway, Spain, France there, and over the other side, this is where the US is. So we are very far north. In fact, in the most northerly community in the world. And so Ny-Ålesund, well, there's probably, I think we've got a few video clips that we can show you looking around. It's a fantastic base for exploring the Arctic. It's an old mining settlement, and over the past sort of 50 plus years, slowly turned into a science village, essentially, where there are research stations from different countries. There's a canteen, there's marine labs, there's all this support network around you so that you can get on with researching and exploring the Arctic. And that's where our base is at the UK's Arctic Research Station, the NERC Arctic Research Station. And on Arctic Live, we do a couple of things. So we do these live lessons to bring the Arctic to you. And also we conduct research. So what we're looking at is marine research and marine monitoring. So that's monitoring the waters behind the station, the fjord here. And fjord's just a Norwegian word, in fact, for a sea inlet, and that runs past the station. And over the past few years, we've been looking at two things. We have been looking at plastics in the marine environment and where they are and how much there is. And the second thing we have been looking at is ocean acidification. And that's the process by which carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is absorbed into the sea and changes its chemistry. I'm going to come on to ocean acidification next week when we look at the science part of Arctic Live. Now, today's live lesson is an Arctic food chain mobile. I'm going to do a few things. We're going to go through some key science terms to get those down. We're going to look at building a food chain mobile and modeling that for you. We'd love to see your finished articles. I do post them using the hashtag Arctic Live, which is on the screen. And also, we're then going to look at the pre-submitted questions and go through those and any questions coming up on the live chat. Brings me on to the live chat. It's a live classroom, not a live chat room. So please keep your comments, shout outs, questions on topic. It just makes it much easier for us to pick those up and incorporate them into the live lesson, and also make sure that we don't miss anything. So let's see who we've got online. We have schools from the UK, USA, Ireland, India. So hello to everybody watching in those countries. I wonder if we have any more countries watching. And we've got some great shout outs. So if I'm just going to come down and have a look at the shout outs. And we have shout outs from Elliot and Henry in Market Deeping. So hi to you guys. We've got all of St Wilfrid's Primary School children watching today. So hello to all the students from St Wilfrid's. Great to have you with us. We've got Boo Plant from Linton Village College. So wonderful to have you guys. Big shout out to everyone at Linton Village College. St Joseph's Junior School, and that is in Camberwell. So hi to all the students from St. Joseph's. We've got hello to badgers and red squirrels, and they are from Wellington Primary School, so fab to have you. A big hello to classes 3E, 3C, and 3HC, and they are from St. Martin's Primary School in Weston-super-Mare. And your teachers miss you, and I imagine you miss them. It's hard being apart from that normal routine during these times of lockdown. And then from Denise Ahmed would like to say, my young scientists, Zakaria, Yaya, Isa, and Mariam, keep on learning and keep on loving education. Fab to hear we've got so many young scientists watching today. We had the year threes at Grooville School, and stay safe. That's from your teachers. A big hello to Haybridge Primary School, and especially the year 5 Genius Gems. So big hi to all the year 5 Genius Gems out there. Hi to Garden School, and that's from Josie and Jasper. Big hello to you two and to all the students from the Garden House School. We've got Kirkland Park Primary, and that's from Theo. So big hello to Kirkland Park students watching. Great to have you on board. Hello to all students at St. John Plussington on the Wirral. Great to have you. We're up on the Wirral to see the launch of the Royal Research Ship Sir David Attenborough just a few months ago. So that was fab being up there. And well done for all the hard work taking place during lockdown. And last but no means least, hello to all of the year 4 squirrels from Stallbridge. And we've got a few on the live chat. There's a hi from Hattie at Hepworth Junior. We've got Lily B in Jersey. We've got Katie P. Got lots of Jersey students come here. We've got Greenleaf Primary, St. Martin's. Great to have you with us. Really, really fab. We're going to get on to some sort of like science keywords now. And those are really going to help us when we talk about the different living things in the Arctic. We'll come on to those in a bit, but we're just going to learn some key science terms. So the first thing that we're going to look at is this sort of omni-herbicarnivore thing. So what's that all about? Well, we're talking about how different living things are connected through feeding. And we've got these science terms which describes what kind of things a living thing eats. So the first term we have is herbivore. And a herbivore just means something that eats plants, or in the Arctic, so a plant like algae. So herbivore, a plant eater. The next one we have is an omnivore, and that's really not very fussy-vor. And so an omnivore eats everything, omni meaning everything, and they're eating so both plants and other animals. So we've got herbivore, omnivore, and the last one we have carnivore. And carnivore just means a meat eater. And we've got some examples, I think, on screen. We've got an example, we've got a clam. So that filters small, tiny plant-like algae from the water. Got an Arctic fox, not too fussy. And we've got the walrus, a snuffler along the bottom, so eating crabs and everything else from the bottom of the ocean. So we've got those 3 terms in terms of what things eat. Now, if everybody just ate things, where does that all start? And the secret lies with the sun. So the sun provides the energy for plants and algae to create sugars. And they do that through a process known as photosynthesis. And that is where water and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, or dissolved in the ocean, is turned into sugars using the power of the sun. So we've got the vores describing eating relationships, but then we've got photosynthesis where all that energy begins, turning the solar energy into matter, into plant matter, algae matter, that then can become food for other living things. When we come on to giving words to describe the vores and the words to describe the photosynthesizers, we have two other terms. We've got this thing called producer, and a producer is just that. It produces sugar and food using the solar energy. So to go back, we've got that lovely picture there of the underside of sea ice with the algal communities growing there, the algae growing there, using the power of the sun filtering through the sea ice. That's a producer. Any living thing that then consumes food, whether it's plant or another animal, is a consumer. So it's taking its energy from something else rather than producing itself. And the last set of science terms we have before we explore some of the living things in the Arctic is predator-prey. These are two other terms that you might have come up with or you might have come across. So predator, you can see the polar bear there. A predator is an animal eating another animal. So we've got the polar bear is a predator of seals, and then the other way round, we've got the prey. So that's the animal that gets eaten. In this case, a poor little ringed seal there. It's going to be the prey of the polar bear. Polar bear sneak up and have a little snack there. So there's some key terms we've had. We've heard herbivore, omnivore, carnivore, the different types of eating. We'll go over these when we go through our animals. We've got photosynthesis. That's a process by which sort of food is created using solar power. Then we've got producer-consumer, so living things that produce their own sugars using the sun's energy, and consumers that eat other things. And last, we've got that predator-prey relationship. Who gets eaten and who does the eating? So let's explore some of the living things that we might find in the Arctic. Now, we focus mainly on marine life, but it does have a bit of a crossover. So we're not going to go through every single living thing that we'd find in the Arctic, but we're just going to go over some of them. Some of my favorites are, in fact, not here. And I'm going to let you into a little sort of competition secret thing. There is an Arctic creature hiding behind me. I promise you there is an Arctic creature hiding behind me, and I want guesses by the end of this live lesson what Arctic creature is hiding behind me, and a bonus point if you know its name. Like not Arctic blah blah, but like Eric or Colin or Sally or whatever. So you have to come up with a name for the Arctic animal and what kind of animal it is. So there we go. Have a think about that for the rest of the live lesson. So let's go through the different living things that we've got in our Arctic food web. So we'll go through these and then we'll start to try and place them in a food chain. I'm not going to do the whole mobile piece here because it will swing around and you won't be able to see it. But do create that at home afterwards, all the instructions online. So where are we going to start? We are going to start with the algae. So algae, the producers in the food web. So they're getting the energy from the sun. They're in the sea waters here, turning solar energy into plant energy, basically. Next up will come our Arctic cod. Arctic cod, super fab. They are carnivores, so eating small creatures in the Arctic waters, and they are also consumers. They are both predator and prey, so we'll come on to that in a bit. Very cool insofar as they've got antifreeze in their blood to stop them freezing. So next up, we have the Arctic fox, the super cute Arctic fox. Here we go, a land-based carnivore, could be a predator, could be prey maybe, but consuming, I think I know what it's going to consume, but we'll come on to that in a bit. We have the awesome beluga whale, a type of toothed whale. So rather than filtering small food, using sort of gulping huge amounts of seawater in. It's chasing down animals in the sea to eat. What else have we got here? I'm just going to find out what's coming next. This is very exciting. I love this. We have the clam, the awesome clam living on the bottom of the sea here and filtering nice little algae out of the water for food. We have the copepod. Who could forget the copepod? So we've got the copepod here, and that is a tiny crustacean in relationship to the shrimp and the lobster, and really fantastic. There are lots and lots and lots and lots of these in the ocean. There's 1,347 billion of them. If you write that out, you will have 22 figures on your page. 1,347 billion. So I challenge you to write that. Maybe one of the moderators can see if they can get the numbers right in the live chat. And see if I can count whether there are 22 figures, not including commas. I haven't included the commas in that for anyone who's counting. Just checking up on me. We have the awesome polar bear here, the apex predator in the Arctic, fab polar bear. If we've got time, I will give you a polar bear safety briefing a bit later, because you can't come to the Arctic, even virtually, unless you've done your polar bear safety briefing. We have the ringed seal, the unfortunate ringed seal. That is the prey, the snack of the what do we call it? The snack of the polar bear. The polar bear. There we go. I don't know why the polar bear is escaping me. And then we have the awful walrus, and they are completely cool creatures. They live just round the corner, that way around the corner. Go down the coast by about an hour by boat, and you'll come across the walrus colony. And then last but by no means least, we have the sun that powers everything. Now, I have made a completely wonderful homemade Arctic food chain wall chart. I don't know whether you're ready. I'm quite for my creative genius, but here we are. Jamie's Arctic food chain. And we're going to try, I'm going to come off the top here, and we're going to try and stick on our different things in order. So at the top, we're going to go for, I'm going to have to be a little bit moving around here. At the top, we're going to go for the sun. Hooray. And I'm going to bring this closer so you can see the sun there. The sun. From the sun, we are going to select something, a producer producing energy from the sun. Everybody who's going to guess correctly, and it is the algae. Amazing. So what eats algae in the Arctic? We are going to have eating the algae, if you can remember the wonderful filter feeder, the clam on one side. And then on the other side, we're going to have the numerous and abundant copepod coming up. Okay, can anybody remember what is going to be the clam eater? What is going to eat the clam here? Who can guess? Who's going to guess what will eat the clam? What's coming up? It is the walrus, and then we're going to have the copepod. We've got the Arctic cod there, eating the copepod. And then eating the Arctic cod for nice lunch. You've got the beluga whale, nice snack there. And of course, I think a seal is also going to snack on that. And then last but by no means least, what is going to eat the seal? We've got the fox. And then the wonderful polar bear. So there we have the staggeringly high art. And we're going to start by going at the top. I'm going to move it a bit closer. There we are. We've got the sun at the top. I'm going to disappear, really. And then we're going to creep around the edge, algae. And then we've got the copepods, the clam. We've got the copepods being eaten by the Arctic cod, the walrus eating the clams, and then we get into the massive carnivore stage here, where we've got all these consumers. So the predator of the Arctic cod, we've got the seal and the beluga whale, and then the seal being eaten by these two, the polar bear and the Arctic fox. Whew. So I hope that I have some creative science communicator geniuses out there who are going to make a much better Arctic food chain mobile than me, to show the feeding relationships in the Arctic. So that's your challenge, as well as finding out the name and type of animal behind me, is getting a wonderful one of those. Get it sent over to hashtag Arctic Live, and we are on Twitter and Facebook at Encounter EDU. Be wonderful to see how you get on. So now we're going to have a look at some of the questions you have submitted, as well as looking at the live chat to see if any questions come over there as well. So without further ado, we've got from Stallbridge Primary School, what happens if part of the food chain becomes endangered? It's a really awesome question. And I'm just going to bring back the sort of middle of the food chain here. And if you see that, for instance, if we had a seal becoming endangered, then what would happen is that the animals that relied on that seal would also become endangered. So we think of, when we think about Arctic conservation, we kind of worry about the big fluffy animals down here at the bottom. But in fact, if we got the tiny animals at the top of the food chain coming out, like the copepod here, we could see that the whole range of animals here that would suffer. So perhaps looking at the Arctic food chain, we might say that the copepod here is almost more important than the polar bear to look out for. That's a really great question, so thank you for that. We've got from Linton Village College, we've got, what does a narwhal eat? A narwhal, I always want to see a narwhal. Who wouldn't want to see a unicorn crossed with a dolphin? Amazing looking creatures. So they are a marine feeder. So they're looking at squid, Arctic cod, maybe some crustaceans like crabs. So that kind of animal that they're eating. And in terms of lifespan, we've got probably about 50 years for an average narwhal there. I would love to see one. Maybe we can organize a Linton Village College Encounter EDU narwhal expedition at some point. That would be one of my favorites. Really great. So more coming through here from Linton Village College. We've got, do plastics accumulate in marine organisms? That's a fantastic question. The answer is yes, we don't know. And I'll tell you the reason for that. So we've found strong evidence and a number of examples for plastics accumulating in some larger animals. So for instance, we've got that in whales, very sadly washed up, turtles, seabirds, a whole range of life. We also find that with the smaller creatures like copepods, that they do start eating a lot of, they do ingest small plastic particles, but we don't know whether those accumulate, whether those get stuck or not. There's been a lot of lab studies on it, and I will hear from Dr. Kerry Lewis next week about whether you do get that accumulation in the wee ones. But yes, plastics are accumulating, certainly within the sort of digestive tract, so the stomach of marine creatures, a range of marine creatures, all the way from fish, sea mammals, sea birds, and sea reptiles as well. We've got a really great question here. What years have seen the biggest ice melt? It's a really, really interesting question, and I'm going to focus on the Arctic rather than the Antarctic. So there's two types of ice in the Arctic. There's sea ice, okay, and that's where the sea freezes and thaws each year. There is some permanent sea ice, so ice that never melts in the summer. And also you get land ice. So if I don't want to reveal who's behind me, but we have a glacier here, and we have a sort of ice sheet over Greenland, the Greenland ice sheet. Now, they're affected differently. They're both affected by warming, but they're melting and thawing at different rates, and increasing at different rates too. So seasonally, you've got more ice in the winter, and then it shrinks in the summer. But that amount of ice in the winter is falling. So you got, even though it's doing that, shrinking and growing on a seasonal basis, you've got less to go round. The biggest amount of melt, down to about 4.5 million square kilometers, the lower sort of coverage, was in 2012 for the sea ice. But what we're seeing in Greenland is that huge, great layer of ice on top of Greenland was, in fact, some of the 2019 saw some of the biggest melt out there. And I think just in July of 2019, so just under a year ago, the equivalent of 80 million Olympic swimming pools full of ice melted. So that's a huge amount of ice melting there. But really, really great question. The trends are not getting better. There is a downward trend, I'm afraid to say, in terms of melt, both of sea ice coverage and of the ice sheet on Greenland and on the glaciers here in Svalbard. I mean, certainly the glacial retreat is fairly ferocious on some areas here. The island just over this way, they didn't know it was an island until a few years ago, when the glacier joining it to the mainland receded, and you can actually now drive a boat around it. It's a whole voyeur, I think, if memory serves me right. So I'm just grabbing a couple more questions. We've got from St. Wilfrid's Catholic Primary School. This is a great question. How are food chains being affected right now by global warming? And are there any animals which are critically endangered? It's a really, really good question. And we could probably spend a whole live lesson on how global warming is affecting food chains. So, first of all, we're going to look at some basics here. So, one of the ways in which warming can affect food chains is it can disrupt the habitat. So if the habitat isn't suitable for certain animals, they won't be able to survive as much. An example of that habitat is the hunting habitat for a polar bear is sea ice, and they use it as a platform to hunt seals. Seals also use the sea ice as a platform for having their pups. So if that habitat disappears, then it affects the amount or the ability for these types of animals to survive. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll die off, but it will put pressure on those types of animals. Another example is when you saw the picture before of the algae on the bottom of the sea ice. When that dies, those sugars fall to the bottom of the ocean in what's called sort of marine snow. It looks like these sort of snow particles falling through the water. And that means that creatures that live on the bottom of the ocean, like sea urchins and starfish up in the Arctic, if that sea ice were to disappear because of warming, they would get less food. And then warming also creates competition and conflict with new species. So as the ocean warms, then species that are, or living things, like different types of fish, like even mackerel, sort of almost a sort of like subtropical fish, can be found up here. Because the waters are getting warmer, they can come from further south, which is in fact that way, and come up further north and compete for food with living things that normally live here. So we've got three things. We've got a loss of habitat that can put a dampener on populations, put pressure on different living things like the polar bear and the seal. We've got a loss of habitat which can just reduce the amount of food available, like the reduction in sea ice and creatures that live on the sea floor. And we've got increased competition as warming allows other species, living things, to come further north and compete with the animals that live in the Arctic. And the great problem with the Arctic, so I'll just grab the globe again. If you're a type of where are we? Swizzle round. If you're a type of wrong place. If you're a type of fish and you can just move further north, that's okay. But if you're an Arctic fish and you have to move further north, eventually you'll run out of space. And so that's why the pressure on these Arctic species being driven north and other species coming in behind them, that's why it's quite a critical issue to consider. But really, really great question, and really wonderful and great from St. Wilfrid's Primary School. So I hope that helps you out. I'm going back to Linton Village College now, who would like to know, are we due an ice age? If so, when is the estimated date for this? We're about, 10, 11,000 years out of the last ice age, sort of ending sort of like about 9,000 BC. And we have an ice age probably sort of every sort of 40,000 years or so. Those natural cycles, we might be sort of coming up to a peak now and sort of entering sort of towards a cooling period, but those natural cycles are being pretty well messed up, and just in plain English, by the anthropogenic, so the human-made warming that's currently taking place. So are we due an ice age? Is almost up to us about whether we change our attitude towards the natural world and look at ways in which we can stop climate change and reduce the emissions that are changing how our planet operates. But amazing question. These are getting quite deep, these questions. How might food chains be affected in the future by global warming? We've sort of covered that. What animals will be the most resilient thanks to the broader range of foods they eat? Well, that's an amazing question. And certainly we see those species that have a larger natural range already will be, so they may be of ocean chemistry, of temperature, or whatever. They can eat a variety of different foods. Those animals that are more sort of adaptable at the moment, because they experience a bigger range, will be those probably that have a greater chance of survival. And we can see that with the krill that live at the end of the fjord here. And that was an experiment done in 2014, where because the ocean chemistry here is quite changeable because of all the meltwater coming off the glacier, the krill weren't being too affected by being exposed to projected future changes in ocean chemistry. So the krill were being quite resilient here because they're experiencing quite a big change in this fjord environment. Going to St. Pleasington Catholic College, and we'll come on to the live chat in just a bit, that we have, this great question, what may be the knock-on effect in the food chain if polar bears became extinct? Well, just coming back to my wonderful creation here, if we had fewer polar bears, then there'll be fewer things eating seals. So the seal population might go up. The walrus population might go up as they're feeding, the polar bears are feeding on walrus too. And that may have knock-on impacts. Another predator may take over. We might see the orca become more abundant because they take over a role, or maybe they can't, or that Arctic foxes become more abundant. So it has this sort of to different implications, and you can model it and whatever. Model meaning you can sort of think up different ways in which, if this one goes down, will this one go up, to try and see what will happen. But if you remove a predator, often we see in other ecosystems like the coral reef, you remove an apex predator like sharks, it reduces the overall health of the reef, because these sort of medium predators start to get out of control. So there's more seals, there's fewer fish, and it starts to create imbalance in the ecosystem. And then a follow-up from that is, how can we manage the food change in the Arctic? Can we make a difference? Certainly, and it's a really great question. And I think one of the things that, going to the Arctic does is it just makes all these very abstract things real. We talk about global warming, we talk about climate change, we talk about this, we talk about that. And I've seen, grown-up adult scientists cry when they've seen sort of increased runoff from glaciers, when they've seen changes over their lifetime, when they see these changes. And it just makes us all, want to work so much harder, because it is one of the most staggeringly beautiful places on the planet up here. It is wonderful. It is fragile. One of the team, Helen, who you'll hear from next week, said, I don't want my kids to learn about the Arctic in history. I want them to learn about it in geography and science. This shouldn't be something that's, this shouldn't be in the history books, and it be a sort of a brand picture behind me. So can we make a difference? Yes, we can. And what we've seen in our reduction on natural systems during lockdown, because we're consuming less, because we're traveling less and making different travel choices, is maybe something, an attitude, not necessarily the behaviors, but the attitudes behind that we can take into a post-lockdown world. So how can we emerge from this with a different mindset, and a mindset that respects the natural world, including the Arctic, and take some of a silver lining from where we are now? Really, really amazing questions. I think we've got about 6 minutes left to turn to the live chat. If you have posted a question, please repost it so that I can see it, because I know that I can see out of the corner of my eye the live chat has been whizzing along, but I'm just going to pick some of them now. So we've got Chelsea. If climate change does happen faster and the ice melts more rapidly, will that cause more Arctic animals to be extinct, or will they be able to live in hotter climates? It's a really difficult one, Chelsea. We simply don't know. It will place, what we talk about is pressures. So it will place more pressure on communities. You are seeing polar bears and grizzly bears mating, perhaps. You're seeing polar bears going into human communities more to search for rubbish. You're seeing those, human wildlife conflicts happening. But the more pressure we add to these systems, the more likelihood that we will see a large reduction in creatures. If we destroy the habitat, then they don't have a home to survive from. Really, really great question. Jackie Mallet. Jackie, this is a great question. Why aren't there penguins in the Arctic? It's a really simple answer, Jackie. Is they can't swim that far. I mean, who knows? I mean, they just haven't got that far, Jackie. There are some penguins, and contrary to popular opinion, there are some penguins in the northern hemisphere, just. And you do have them, and they are on one of the Galapagos Islands, just north of the equator. But it's interesting is that we did have a penguin-type animal, bird, up in the Arctic. In fact, it's known as a penguin in French, and that's the great auk, which is part of this great family of birds. So we had the great auk up in the north. Puffins, also related there, as well as the little orc, which you'll still find in the Arctic. So there are penguin-type animals up in the Arctic, and definitely there were these large ones, a great orc. Have a look at a very sad story about how it went extinct. Daisy, what temperature is it up in Yolesund at the moment? Daisy, it's a beautiful day. I don't really need this massive jacket. It's just -1. Cloudy with sunny spells and a light breeze from the east. So lovely, lovely afternoon up in the Yolesund at the moment. Quite fab. Thank you very much. Why doesn't the polar bear eat the Arctic fox? And that's from Erin. That's a great question. There may be some examples I don't know of polar bears preying on Arctic foxes, but they may just be able to run away that bit faster. Really good questions. From Devoran homeschoolers, what unusual fish have we caught in Svalbard? Well, we haven't caught. We're not going fishing. We're putting our nets over the side, but that's to catch plankton like copepods and plastic and took sample for those. But I think that some really unusually, some mackerel were caught up off Svalbard last year when we were up there. Jake Jackson Cole, sorry, there's lots of J's there. That would be what from Bourne Community College. What do you feel will help most with stopping climate change? It's a really great question. I think that there's a big problem if we put all the responsibility on consumers, but I definitely think we do need to think about 3 broad areas, and that's what we eat, that's how we travel, and that's how we live. So eating a low carbon diet, I suddenly know that Ellie, who's producing at the moment, has switched to a vegan diet to reduce her impact on the natural environment. Looking at how you travel by bike, on foot, I think, perhaps this sort of small local networks will reemerge after lockdown. And then think about how we live, the amount we actually need. Has your life fallen apart because you haven't been able to get to the shops? I mean, maybe a little bit, but actually just thinking about how we can find a new balance afterwards. But I do think that it can't just be consumer choice. I think that government does have a role in regulation and potentially in looking at some form of pricing or taxation around the externalities of actions. And an externality really means the true cost. So when you buy a flight ticket, the true cost to the planet through all those emissions, are we actually willing to take that into account when we look at how we behave, and will government help to sort of level the playing field and make cheaper options, the sort of more sustainable options, cheaper for us all? Because I know there is that great difficulty with making the right choice, but not costing more. So from there, we're going to Matt Palmer. What is the biggest animal? It's a blue whale. They live that way. Great question. What do you like best here? What do I like best here? I like the muffled sound of whispering ice. That's what I like the most. I like the strange way in which fresh snow dampens sound, and then how this clear, wonderful place allows faraway sounds to drift towards you. I like that the most, and I like the sort of crunching and breaking and shuddering of icebergs going past. Yeah, it's magic up here. It's really, really magic. And where are we? What's behind me? Jess in Jersey. Have you all had your guesses in? Okay. It is an Arctic fox. This is the super, super cutie who comes and says hello at breakfast and hangs around the kitchen door, who is awesome. So hello to the Arctic fox hiding behind me. I wonder what name you've come up with him. So we'll see for that. Thank you so much for all your questions. Thank you for being part of this Arctic Live lesson, supported and part of the AXA Ocean Education Program. Really looking forward to seeing your creations online. I hope you can do much better than me. But it's very soon. It's going to be goodbye from the Arctic. But do join us tomorrow. We've got a fab couple of sessions at 11:30 UK time and then 5 UK time, and that is with Nick Cox, one of the most experienced polar explorers, basically, and travelers and operators that we have in this country. Super decades of experience in the polar regions. I can't wait to have a chat with Nick tomorrow. Then on Thursday and Friday, we've got more live investigations, and that is looking at keeping warm, looking at materials choices, and then also looking at sea level rise. So do join us for those. But it's been fab. We've gotten to some really sort of not just exploring the different living things up here, but also looking at our future together. And it is tough for us all at the moment, but it also gives us a chance to reflect on how we might take some positives out of the current situation and reassess our relationship with the wonderful natural world, including the Arctic, one of the most special places on the planet. So it's goodbye for now from Arctic Live, and see you very shortly. Bye-bye.